Hey, Monica, did you know it's now even easier to listen to Round the Hay Bale podcast?
What? Really? How easy?
That's right. All you have to do is say, Alexa, play Round the Hay Bale podcast.
Playing Round the Hay Bale podcast on Apple Music.
Ooh, we fancy.
Tune in to Round the Hay Bale every Monday at 9 a.m. Central.
Round the Hay Bale is brought to you by...
With gardening season in full bloom, Cayce certified organic products are just what your garden needs.
From fertilizing your orchards to feeding your soil, Cayce's calcium-based fertilizer gives your plants the essential minerals they need to thrive.
Applying Cayce to agricultural soils and waters has been proven to increase plant and crop yields while making vegetables and grains healthier and more nutritious.
In addition, Cayce can help restore the nutrient balance in animals when they're fed plants grown using Cayce in both soil and water.
To check out all of Cayce's organic products, visit cayce.com and use our promo code HAYBALE for 10% off of your purchase.
Grab a cup of joe and gather round the hay bale with your hosts, Alicia from Country Mama Musings, Cayce from Ormsby Farms, and Monica from Bland's Promised Land Ranch. Now, here they are. Hey, y'all. Hey.
Hey, y'all. Hey, welcome back to Round the Hay Bale, Season 4. We are unscripted. I'm Alicia.
Hey, y'all. It's Cayce.
And I'm Monica. Welcome back. Now, today I am really excited to welcome one of our wonderful friends and a wonderful lady. Going to be a fun time tonight talking to her. It is Carmen from Jesus Loving Homesteader. Carmen, thank you so much for being here with us tonight.
So glad to be here.
So we are going to be discussing the idea that, I want a homestead, but I don't have enough land. I can't do it. I don't have a big enough space. These are all things that people say a lot. They say that. They make these excuses to kind of maybe avoid living their dreams out, living out those big things that maybe they're made for greater things. So today we want to talk to Carmen because, Carmen, you don't have like 100 acres, right? You have a smaller piece of land, but you maximize your space. So tell us a little bit about what you use your space for and kind of how much land you use to grow your homestead.
We're on a little under a half an acre. We pretty much bought our house because of that yard. We already knew, we were like, when we come to this house, we are going to have a garden and we are going to do whatever we can to make sure that our family is fed. And I know what's in my children's food. I know a lot of the time, especially in this time, after things went down, people are like, okay, how do I ensure that my children are eating well, but they're eating well on our budget? And it's really hard to maneuver a budget, especially when you're used to living a certain way. I mean, people immediately think, okay, well, beans and rice, that's the only way. But no, you can do a lot of things. It just takes hard work. When we got under our half an acre, we were like immediately working on the garden. I'm like, if we're going to do this, we're going to do this now. And I do agree that a lot of the time people say, oh, I can't do it on a small space, and they don't try. But I think it's because there's just not enough people giving them hope. There's just not enough people saying, you can do this. I do it. I know we're much more motivated when we see someone else doing what we want to do. It's very encouraging, and we live in a time where people need to be encouraged. They need hope. They need to know that not only can I do this, but I can do this the way and get the results that I want and need for my family.
Yeah, I think you make a really good point. I think it's just that they're not motivated because they don't see other people doing it successfully. You know, you can see people do apartment gardening. You can go to YouTube and you can go to these places and even Instagram, which I like Instagram, but I think that people always come up with the whole, it's Instagram worthy. Is it pretty enough for Instagram? And unfortunately, people kind of mock that and say, "Oh no, this is real." Okay, I'm here to tell you that a lot of Instagram is absolutely beautiful. It's made for those people that are going to take those beautiful pictures. It is exactly what it is. It is a snapshot. Okay. The reels are 60 seconds long or so. You've got snapshots into people's life, into their gardens, into their food forest, whatever they're growing. And I'm going to tell you right now, I've been to Carmen's place. And when I saw on YouTube and her social media, I'm thinking, oh my gosh, they have acres of land. It is massive. And I walked into her backyard and I'm like, wait, are you joking me right now? Like, this is amazing. Like, it wasn't, I was amazed. I wasn't amazed because I was like, oh my gosh, this is a small yard, because that's not it. I was like, oh my gosh, you were doing an amazing amount of things in this space. I was so impressed with the amount of use that you had put into your home and to your garden and to your space, because it was a garden space. And then there were still areas for your kids to play and enjoy. It wasn't like you were like, sorry, children, there is no time for play here. We are only growing food. And this is no, you have a place for your children. You have a place for your animals. You have a place for your food to grow, and you're maximizing every square inch of that yard. And I absolutely love it. And I love that you have a plan for your front yard too, because I know there's a plan there. And maybe we can touch on that once Cayce's finished. Cayce, do you have something you want to add to this amazement that I have of Carmen's space?
Well, speaking of the amazement, for anybody that actually watches Carmen's YouTube videos and for her Instagram, you truly do think, like Monica said, oh yeah, Carmen lives on probably like 20 acres. And yeah, she's living this dream. Okay, 20 acres. And then to hear that she just said, y'all, because she just said it on our podcast, she's a little under a half of an acre. You're like, wait, for reals, for reals? Because everything that she grows with a purpose. And she said it at the beginning of this episode that most people don't listen until they hear somebody in their situation say, yes, it is possible. You can grow for your family. She's a family of 4, and she can grow her family's food 5, 6. What, Monica, what are you putting up on me? Yeah?
She's a family of 6. She has 4 children. So she's a family of 6.
She grows children as well.
She has
She
children.
grows children.
She has 2 full-time children there, but she has 2 more children that live with her the rest of the season. And not only does she have 4 kids, but she has been known to house other families because that is her heart. Like, her and her husband have a heart for people. So like at any given time, it's not just like a family of 6. It's like you go to
so for listeners, so I don't look crazy, I know Carmen's daughter and son from all the pictures that she posts.
Yes,
so
they're the ones that are there all the time. But
she
has 2 other daughters that are there the rest of the year. But what I will say is, like, literally though, their hearts are so big. People have been known to live with them and other children. At one point, I want to say she probably had like 7 or 8 kids 7 kids, maybe, her 4, and then 3 extras in her house at one time. So that's a lot of people. And she's feeding those people. And she's shaking her head, yes, because that is the heart. And she's using that heart to put into her yard and going from there. And she's really growing. Even
thinking of feeding a family of 4 is amazing. And now that we know that she's feeding a family of 400, that is even bigger and amazing.
She feeds them all.
You don't understand how, like, when I go into it, and there was a couple, I think last season I was like blowing Carmen's Instagram up because I was asking her questions on when to put certain things in and when to plant certain things, because everything in her garden has a purpose and it's there, and she's spaced it out, and it's kind of like what you call garden math or the homesteading quote unquote math, because she knows, okay, it takes up this much space. I know it needs to grow here. I have this much space. This is what I need. And that's what you have to think of when you're going into having a smaller homestead. You have to use every inch of your homestead for a purpose. Now, I'm not going to go, before I pass it on to Alicia, because you know, Alicia is the one that homesteads, and she's so amazing and wonderful, and she does it because she likes to look at the flowers and they look beautiful. I am like Eric over at Bland's Promised Land Ranch, who you will hear next episode. Everything is about money and a purpose for me on the homestead. If you are not paying me back, whether it's you're feeding my family or doing this, then you've got to go.
We're the multitude.
So
if you're not feeding the multitude.
If you're not growing, like if a plant's not producing the amount of plants that I think it should plant or it should produce, then you're being pulled. And I'm moving on to the next plant. So I want to pitch it over to Alicia because she's the nicer one of the three of us hosts, because she actually plants stuff for the visual.
I'm more of the Pollyanna of the group when it comes to that, because I do love my zinnias. I love things that are pretty. But, you know, I want to say for our listeners who have come in to listen to this thinking, I need a big piece of property. And here Carmen is saying, no, you don't. I want everybody to know that I live on 5 acres and it's overwhelming to me. I think it would be much easier if I had a plot of land where I could say, this is what I have to work with. This is what I'm going to put within this space, instead of saying, oh my gosh, I'm overwhelmed with having to keep up with 5 acres of property, in addition to trying to figure out where I'm going to put my garden, where I'm going to grow things, where are my animals going to be. So for those who are listening who think it's a blessing to have a large piece of property, just know it can be a blessing to have something that's manageable. And Carmen living on just a little bit under a half an acre, that is manageable. And I know that even when we had Lady Boots on the other day from Boots and Bounty, I thought, just from what I saw in her videos and online, I thought she had a huge garden as well. And then we find out her garden was only 400 square feet. She did a lot in that 400 square feet. And, you know, I just think it's important that if you're living in the suburbs, if you're living on a little piece of property, you have your side yards to work with, you've got balconies to work with, you've got things you can work with where you can grow some food for your family. It doesn't have to be enough to sustain you through the whole year, but you can certainly supplement your pantry by what you can grow on that piece of property. And I think it's important that Carmen sharing with us today, and I'm going to turn it back over to her in a minute because I want her opinion on some of this as well, is I think it's important because I'm going to go unscripted here. It used to be that our government really supported us to do things on our own property, like a victory garden during World War II. They encouraged everybody, grow a garden, turn your front yard into a garden, and raise 2 chickens so you have eggs. They encouraged that. And now we have a government and red tape and bureaucracy that keeps us from doing that. If you live in a suburb area, for instance, I just saw on a local Facebook group where they said, who can I get some help from? Because I want to turn my front yard into a garden, and the city's telling me, no, I can't do it. I want to have vegetables for myself. I want to have vegetables for if anybody walks by and they want to pick an apple, or if they want to pick a tomato, they can. And the government of the city is telling me I can't do this. Cayce, what do you think? I said I was going to send it over to Carmen. She's ready. And Casey's like, talk to me. I want to go next.
I just wanted to say, before we get into all of that, because we talked about the government, and Carmen, you weren't on this episode that we talked about this, but we were talked about how a government aided program, EBT, you could buy local plants, anything that grew into food. You could use your EBT card to purchase.
And then they tell you can't plant it in your yard.
No, then we got flagged on our episode because of that. So, because we're unscripted and we're crazy here, we're like, we got a slap on the wrist. So
I hope we don't get a slap on the wrist for what I said. I'm sorry. to my co-hosts. But it's
That's
the
why I'm
truth.
saying now, because I will be the person to say that, listen, y'all that are listening, because we have a lot of our listeners that listen in the first 72 hours that our episode drops, because you need to hear this stuff that we're talking about. Okay. We're not fear mongering. We're not saying this is how you should do, this is how you should live. I think a lot of people think that that's what we're doing in the homesteading community, is saying, be like me and do it like me. No, what we're saying is that you can do it if you want to. If you want to live this lifestyle, if you want to grow healthier food, if you want your children to eat a cleaner, balanced meals, if you want to have less stress, if you want to be closer to God, this is the lifestyle that you need to go for. And I just wanted to say that before we pass it over to Carmen, because Carmen is amazing. And I wanted to be that host that said, we were flagged before, but that's not going to stop us. We're still going to say the truth, and we're going to speak the truth, whether we get flagged or not. So I'm passing it over to Carmen now.
I am shocked that they would flag this for that. I mean, this is America. I mean, the colonists came here and they were given very strict instructions on having to create a colony that would work. And part of that was them having a way of food, growing their own crops and learning how to barter and do the things that we just now in our generation are trying to bring back. Discovering that we have to know how to do these things. It shocks me that we live in a time where a lot of people have no idea how to grow a crop or even just do anything but go to the grocery store. I mean, they don't know the difference between something that's organic and something that is pasteurized or chemically treated. They don't know. Our eggs, you go to the store and there's different kinds of eggs. There's, the free range and the caged and the non-caged, and people have no idea. They have no idea. They look at the price. That's what we see. That's what we've always known. It's like, how much is this? What can I afford? This is what people know. When I also want to encourage you guys that your garden, I do grow a lot of things, a lot of different variety of things, but just as an American, when I think of an American child today, ketchup, salsa, marinara sauce, tomato sauce, that's tomatoes. That's all tomatoes. Grow tomatoes and watch how that impacts what's in your pantry. We grow tomatoes, and when it's a good crop, we are going through ketchup, marinara sauce, tomato sauce, salsa, diced tomatoes, all winter, all up into spring, just from our garden. I mean, just with basic learning of canning. It's amazing what one crop would do, what you being dedicated to one crop will do, and for your family. I mean, I want everybody to think for a moment, how much ketchup do you go through if you have children? The majority of people go through a lot of ketchup. If you are in Texas, how much salsa do you go through? I mean, and then the jars are tiny. I mean, you have to, if you have a big family, you're buying a lot of salsa. And let's say you're a spaghetti family. Where are you at? Church potluck. Where's the spaghetti? The chili. That's a lot of tomatoes. Stuff that you buy at the store, and you can grow for so much cheaper, and you can can it yourself for so much cheaper, and you know what's in it. I mean, how many times have we looked at a label and we're like, what does this even mean? Like, what is this? What are they putting in my food? And then we buy it anyway because we need it, right? Or you look at the better option, or what you think is the better option, because it has a brown fancy vintage label that says natural, and we assume that it's good.
It's because it's a cheaper price. It's a cheaper price too. Yep. That's what we think.
Yeah, we're brainwashed to believe that. I mean, seriously, that's what we grew up seeing, and that's what it is. Um, and you're right, Alicia, I think you're the one that said it. It tastes better when we get it from the garden. Tomatoes at the store don't taste like tomatoes you grow. Like, it blew my mind. Garlic is another one. If you've ever grown garlic, it's almost spicy. Like, I was like, hold up. I was like, what is this? Why is my garlic kind of spicy? And I was like, is this what real garlic tastes like? Like, have I been given this bland and, you know how the recipe is like 3 cloves of garlic in this recipe, and you're like, I need 10, because you need to taste it. No, you don't need that when you grow garlic. You need 2 because it's different. It's just different. And I want to tell you that about a little bit about the taste of things too, of how much better and how much it just tastes better, because I want to encourage you that you may not even like something at the grocery store, and then you might grow it and be like, hold on, I think I like this. Why don't I like the one that I'm getting at the grocery store? A lot of the vegetables at the grocery store, especially non-organic, do you know it's better to buy frozen vegetables than it is to buy them fresh, like sitting at the grocery store? Do you know why? Because when they're frozen, they pick it immediately when it's ripe, and then they freeze it. When they pick the ones that are so-called fresh, that are sitting on the counters at the store, a lot of the time it's not ripe at all. It's not even close to being ripe. And then they'll package it, they'll put it on the trucks, and then you may not get it till it's about 2 weeks old. And then you see it, and then you're like, why is it bland? Because it wasn't even picked when it was ready. When I found that out, I was just mind blown. I was like, huh. I was like, so eggs too. Eggs too. You go get the eggs, you're eating 3-week-old eggs or more. And your chickens that laid those eggs, the ones that are from those factories and stuff, a lot of the time, those chickens are full. Bumblefoot, disease, sicknesses. Their friend that's in the same cage is dead. But hey, guess what they're not going to do? They're not going to be like, well, that one was contaminated, so let's not sell any of these eggs. No, they're selling it to you and your family because they don't care. They don't care about the animal that's laying those eggs, and they don't care about your children that you gave birth to. That's just the reality, and we have to start taking hold of our families, what's going in our bodies, and our animals. We don't just take care of our families, but our animals too. Feed your animals right. Go ahead, Alicia.
I was going to say, this is kind of the direction where I was going when I was talking about, what we used to do back in the day with the victory gardens and having our own food on our homestead, knowing what we're feeding our family, participating in what we're putting on our table, because we become so detached from where our food comes from. And I wanted to re-hit again on, the individual that was posting on Facebook. They're trying to find a way where they can utilize their property to their best advantage. And I'm going to throw my co-hosts and our guest today under the bus, because I've been doing it the last few episodes. I want to do a real quick round robin, 2 rounds, only 2 rounds this time, guys. And I'm going to start with Carmen. I want to know, if you only had your front yard to work with, and the powers that be were like, yeah, you can't tear up all your grass and put in a garden, how would you implement a food source that you can grow in your front yard so that it looks like it's part of the landscape? Because I'm going to take some of these answers, I'm going to relay it back to that individual, and I'm also going to invite them to listen to the podcast and join our Facebook group. But what would you do to kind of soften that garden feel and still grow some food so that you can do it right underneath the government's nose?
Wow, that's an amazing question. I would probably go with amaranth first. Amaranth is a good spinach supplement, and it is beautiful. It is tall. So, to the blind eye, it's a flower. It's just a gorgeous ornamental flower. You can actually eat the grains too, very similar to quinoa. When the grains come, or the seeds, I would probably do cucumber. I'd probably mix cucumber with a morning glory. Like, I'd probably put them on the same trellis. So you're also getting cucumber, but you're also seeing the pretty flowers. So to the blind eye, you're just like, oh, look, the beautiful morning glories. But yeah, you'll have cucumber in there. And you can do different varieties. Smaller, bigger pickling is probably easier to hide. And regardless, any cucumber is good. I mean, seriously, like they're just delicious and you can use them for the same things. I couldn't live without tomatoes. I just have to find a way to incorporate a tomato. I'd have to, because like I said, that if you are not growing anything, grow tomatoes. That you can do way too much with them.
Poor Monica's having a meltdown because Carmen did 3 rounds in one answer.
Yeah, but I have an idea that she didn't say.
Okay, Casey's melting down too.
Okay, Casey's not going to say this. I would go for medicinals, and I would grow calendula. So it's not necessarily a food source, but is a healing source, because calendula is one of those ones that it's just a pretty flower until you use it for other things, because not only can you eat it still, but you can use it for all kinds of healing balms, and you can do so much with calendula, and it's beautiful. So yeah, calendula. I'm growing medicinal. That's where I'm going with my front yard. Casey, do you have something you would add to your front yard to make it disguising to the man? Not the man upstairs, but the man, like the national disaster, not the natural disaster. However,
Yes. Actually, luckily for all of us, Carmen took most of our answers, and I would describe, totally try to get tomatoes somewhere in my front yard, because as she said, it is what us as Americans go through the most. If you truly sit down and think, what do I eat the most of? Tomato product is somewhere in that. But okay, funny story, because it ties into my answer. I have 3 raised beds in my front yard that I have done nothing with in the 2 years. Don't judge me. And I haven't weeded them or doing anything. And so people drive by and you can kind of see my garden from like the left side. It's far back, but I had huge, giant zucchini and squash plants this year. We did about 700 pounds of zucchini and squash this year, and our plants were humongous and did really well. And the front weeds, everybody's always like, are you growing zucchini and squash in those front raised beds? And I'm like, no, girl, them is weeds. But I would totally put zucchini and squash plants hidden in the front to look like elephant ears or something, because you don't really you don't see zucchini because of the color of the zucchini and the leaves until you dig deep. And zucchini and squash plants are so prevalent that they will produce enough food for you that you truly can go 2 years on the zucchini squash you grow. So I would say zucchini squash, mic drop. Alicia?
Those are all great answers. I think what I would do is something that I've done here in my raised garden is, if I lived in a suburban situation, I would love to line the walkway to my house with the cattle panel arches and plant the morning glories and the cucumbers, like Carmen said, but also imagine how pretty it would be if you had like those dragon tongue beans. It would be ornamental and so pretty. Everybody would be interested, but again, it would look like part of the landscape. So that's what I would do, is I would implement those archways. Paint your trellises white, paint the cattle panels, dress them up a little bit if you have to, so that it doesn't look so industrial. Make it look pretty and fool the man and grow over those trellises, because they're so amazing. To Monica next, and then to Carmen. What's your round 2 answer?
okay, so I'm going with medicinal still, because I think this is important. And we talk about safety on the homestead. We talk about first aid. I think actually our next episode is about safety on the homestead. So one of the things I would grow, if I had to hide things a little bit out there in the open, is I would grow like the cayenne pepper. And the thing is that because as a prepping mindset, I want spice. I want to be able to add a little heat to my food. Cayenne is really good for that, but it's also medicinal because it is actually great for, first of all, it's good for circulation, but also it is a hemostatic herb, which means it can help with clotting your blood. It can help if you're having those moments where you need something to help slow a bleed, as well as it can help slow a heart attack, just so you know, too. So these are things that can be used. So I would be growing some really pretty cayenne peppers, and they're this like really pretty bright red. So, I mean, yeah, cayenne, why not? So not only can you eat it, but you can use it for medicinal purposes. Know your plants. There's a lot of plants that you can grow that are very pretty and you can use in your first aid kit. Okay, Carmen, what do you got? Something else you're going to put in that front yard and make it look pretty, but use it.
Asparagus. Hands down asparagus. You grow it once and you have it for 20 years. I mean, and it grows
Boom.
like it grows easily, and you can hide the asparagus within the plants in the back. It grows tall when you don't pick it, so throughout like when you're not harvesting. So it will make a really pretty, fluffy, like almost fern-like display. And when they go to seed, the berries turn pretty and red. I mean, when I see it, like when people come to the garden and they see it all ferned out, they don't even know it's asparagus. They're pretty just like, what is that? It's so pretty, you know? And I'm just like, oh yeah, that's asparagus. They're shocked. But when they are growing without the ferns, you know, they grow prolifically. We're constantly picking them. I mean, it's almost like overnight. I'm like, what is going on? You will have asparagus, asparagus, asparagus. And like I said, grow it once. And it's 20 years of asparagus. I mean, you just
That's
can't go wrong
amazing.
with that.
Cayce?
So I've noticed one thing with our podcast. Every time we have a host on, right before I'm called on, the hosts say literally what I was going to say before I was able to say it. Because I was going to say asparagus. But one thing that I also wanted to say, because now maybe certain people could see this from like roadside, but I would say cilantro. Like we're talking, you know, herbs and stuff, because cilantro really, unless you know what it looks like, it could kind of look like a weed, right? Come on, y'all. It kind of looks
Yeah.
like a weed. And the weed, even after it goes to flower, then you're getting coriander seeds, which can use for other types of seasonings and stuff. And Carmen said salsa. What do you need for salsa? That is by far, hands down, what you need for salsa. So I would say that. Does that work? I'm always
That
last.
works.
I like
It's a
it.
great
Look,
idea.
I'm going with medicinals up here, so I think you're good with the.
I
you're good
know.
with the herb.
I'm trying to learn from Monica about the medicinals and learning how to plant all of that kind of stuff. But I'm just
My-
a
my
fat kid,
final-
and I'm thinking food most of the time.
You're thinking salsa.
The fat kid. Well, you know, to go with
Pretty
the salsa, you
much.
should grow some garlic, and the garlic scapes are beautifully flowered, and that would be great. But what I was going to say, because I'm more on the ornamental aspect here, we all have a different approach. Is I would pull up those boxwoods, you know, like your hedges, and why not put in blueberries and keep them hedged, or raspberries, keep them hedged, and that way you've got a food source. Plus, you've got that pretty little hedge. What about ornamental purple cabbage? You could grow cabbages that would look beautiful as well. So there are all these things that you can add. That was a really fun round robin. I think that was fun. I might just like throw everybody under the bus with a round robin from now on, because it really does put us on our toes, and we come up with some really great stuff.
And Carmen, when
So-
she says that she's really going to do it every episode, she's going to throw the round robin out for all of us and just throw us off our game.
But it's worked really well. Everybody's thinking on their toes, and
Yeah.
I love it.
It's been a good little adventure here, because it does make you think of other things, and some of the things I wouldn't have thought of. I would have never thought of asparagus, but that's a great food source, and that's going to
Yeah.
really be hidden well. I mean, that's a great point too. I mean, I'm thinking
Yeah.
medicinals because it's easy to hide. You know, but then thinking about it too, it made me think that pretty trellis that Alicia wants to grow, you can put peas on there, and peas are gorgeous.
Yes.
Like, what a great little thing. I mean, who's going to be like, ew, take that ugly trellis down? I mean, come on, dude. You can have a cattle panel trellis, and it could be covered in it could be covered in dirt and people be like, oh my gosh, look at that beautiful cattle panel trellis you've just built. I mean, it literally doesn't have to have anything really pretty on it. If it's a cattle panel trellis, people want to go under it. Okay.
You can decorate the front arch of it with, that really pretty mesh that you can get at the Dollar Tree. You can get it in seasonal colors and you can just decorate it all pretty in the front. Nobody needs to know.
Yeah.
So I think that was fun. And like I said, with the Victory Garden as well, they always encourage you to have a couple of chickens. As long as you don't have roos, check with your city ordinances and see if you can have chickens in the front. And Monica, you know how to go and farm things out to other people. If you can't have chickens, find somebody in your circle that can. So Monica, I'm going to turn it to you and then let's see if we can get a little bit more wonderful knowledge from Carmen, from our guest.
Okay, so that's what I was going to I was going to ask Carmen. So one of the things that I really admire about the way you use your space is that I feel like not only do you maximize the space that you have, but you maximize the time that you have with that space, meaning you use all seasons. And I don't want to have a space that I feel overwhelmed with, and I'm learning how to use my seasons, but it's not always about the quantity of something. It's really about the quality of your space. And I was just talking to Eric, and you said you had like a 1,300 square foot garden. My garden's like 750 square feet. Okay. And for my big family. But even Eric was like, look, here's the thing. You want to be able to take time to be able to care for every inch of that space. If we can't handle a 750 square foot space and keep up with it before it starts getting out of hand and taking control of us, then why would we want to try to have a bigger space? Because I was like, oh yeah, that makes sense. I was kind of texting him briefly. I'm like, oh my gosh, this is a big garden. She's got a really big garden. How big is ours? But I wanted to ask you, what is one way you're able to use the seasons? Because I am really just learning now how to use my winter and my fall season. That's one thing I think is awesome about, we have a nice climate that we can do that. So what's one of those things you can talk to people about? And one of those things or some of those things you can recommend people to use the seasons that they're in and to be able to garden throughout the seasons? What's one thing you do, or what's a few things you do, or maybe share some info on that?
Foundation is really important. Make sure you have good soil. Start building your soil. Make sure you're mulching, depending on where you are. I noticed that when we first started gardening, I had 3 raised beds, and I was just going to a big box store, grabbing what was out there, putting it in. And then I was like, hold on, some things are growing better than others, but it's the same soil, same water. Like, what is going on? Well, a lot of the time when you buy plants from a big box store, you don't really think about cucumbers not growing at the same rate as hot peppers in a cold season. Like in spring, your hot peppers are going to be thriving in the heat, so your cucumbers are doing better in the spring. So I don't even, I focus really highly on whatever is growing in that time. If it's cucumber season, I'm throwing a lot of cucumbers out there. I the springtime is for cold crops. So I'm working on cold crops when it's still winter. I'm messing with making sure the soil's good, and I'm just throwing cilantro seeds. I'm throwing Swiss chard seeds. I'm throwing lettuces. So people are like, how in the world do you have your lettuces looking so good and spring's barely started? I was like, because I threw the seeds. I just put them out there. At the end, have you ever had a compost pile? And then you put all this stuff in the compost, you turn around and your pile is growing pumpkins, and it's not even time for pumpkins. You're just like, hey, I guess it is time for pumpkins. It says it's not, but hey, this is thriving. Kind of the same kind of mindset that I've grasped. I was like, you know what? What cooler crops can handle, the seeds just sitting in the garden for a little bit, before it's time. I've found that lettuces can handle it. Cilantro can handle it. Parsley can handle it. So all that stuff comes up first. And adding natives, adding perennials to your garden. When you add perennials, they just come up when they're ready. When you add things like asparagus and comfrey, you're looking at your garden and you're like, everything looks bare, but the comfrey and the asparagus and the things that are starting to come, you're not really doing anything. It just knows it's there and it knows it's ready. When you have perennials already there, it's really low effort. And then you can have time to work on the crops that actually need more attention. Like the ones that like tomatoes, you have to cage them, right? And you have to continuously prune them if you want them to go a certain way, or, you want more airflow. You don't want fungus. You don't want yellow leaves. So you got to stay on top of babying them for a little bit, not forever, but just in the beginning stages, making sure that everything is going well. I wouldn't have time to baby them if I had a bunch of other stuff I had to baby too. You got to work out the timing. Go ahead, Cayce.
I was just going to say that every time we have Carmen on the podcast, it's like I am a new student that is learning so much from this because she says it so beautifully. Yeah? And one, I'm just going to say, Monica, are you sure that's your square foot of the garden? Because, okay, so
Yes.
we know that Carmen is 1,300 square foot for her garden and 1,400 square foot for her animals. That's correct, right, Carmen? So, okay, she's nodding. Y'all can't see it, but she is nodding. So I know for us, because I guess when most people hear that, they think, well, that's large, right? No, it really isn't. Because if you follow us here at Ormsby Farm, our main garden is 3,700 square feet of just the main garden. That's not including our corn or our fruit or anything else. So Carmen is doing all that we're doing in probably 7,000 square feet, give or take, in 1,300 square feet. And what she's telling you, if you are listening on this podcast, is you need to learn when they do the best. And she watches and she learns and she notes and she says, okay, well, I know that I gotta cage my tomatoes or trellis or however you do your tomatoes. Don't send the comments digging me out, but however you do your tomatoes, you have to baby them, and you do. Any gardener knows you have to baby your tomatoes, and it's probably a good 4, 5, maybe even 6 weeks that you're babying those tomatoes. But asparagus, you don't have to baby as much. Peppers, I will say, they're a plan and forget it kind of plant. I mean, I was really bad this year. I forgot to water a couple times. I know that's blasphemy, but I forgot to water, and my peppers are still like, hey, dude, what's up? Yeah, here you go, bell peppers, jalapenos. So if you learn what your climate is telling you, and you can work it out to where it's like, okay, this is the best time that I can put lettuce in. This is the best time that lettuce is done. So I can pull that and I can put that in. You can definitely garden in a small amount of space and still grow the same amount that me and Monica, because both me and Monica have the same amount of land, where Monica, you're at about 10 acres too, right?
Yeah, we have 10 acres, but Eric
Yeah,
doesn't
so
let
are
me
we.
Eric doesn't let me have that much space for my garden. He keeps me to a
Oh,
minimum. That's why. My garden's in my front
heard.
yard. Yeah, so I live that life where he only gives me a little tiny bit of space for my garden because he needs the rest of our front yard for storing hay bales, and the other 8 acres of
Well,
grazable
that's the
land.
meat. I'll stand
Yeah,
behind you, Eric. I got
yeah.
you, my brother.
So,
We're with you. Okay,
yeah.
yes, meat
So
important.
I think my garden was slightly bigger, but then remember I got a greenhouse. And when we got a greenhouse last year, 2 years ago, we put the greenhouse at the end of my garden. So it physically went into my garden space. And that's because we have IBC totes and some other things. Also, we have a pool and a trampoline that takes up space. But I'm pretty sure trampoline and pool is on the Jesus Loving Homesteader space as well. She's still got kid spaces too. So, but my garden is very much contained in that space because we do have space for hay bales. We have things out front. And that is the space that I can maintain physically myself at this point. Now, I have big dreams, and I definitely always talk to Eric about extending the garden beyond. But it's one of those things that I have to be able to maintain and control what I've got there now. And if I can control and deal with that space, then I will be blessed with more when it's time. But we extended it from our original, and then we extended it a little bit more. And this is what's manageable for us because right now what I'm trying to learn is what Carmen was saying. Learn about what plants grow when. And it's taken me, I mean, look, we've been here for 9 years this week. 9 years ago today, we were on day 2 of our 4-day trip down here to Texas to move this life and live this life down here. So this is still, I'm 9 years in and I'm still learning exactly when to put things in the ground. I mean, I just planted, hopefully successfully, I just put Armenian cucumber seeds in the ground. I put Trombosino squash in the ground. I put spaghetti squash in the ground. I started putting those directly in the ground. I have never direct sown any of these seeds before ever, but I'm following some guidelines and I'm praying a lot and watering them and hoping that they come up like they're in a compost pile. But we'll see, because that's not the way it works for me. When I actually put it in my garden, it doesn't want to grow. But when it's in the compost pile, it will grow, just like Carmen said. But I'm still learning. So I'm learning my space is big or as small
on your
as it is.
truck, Monica, or on
Or
your
on my
truck.
because we're growing pumpkins on our truck. But I think that's important. And Carmen said it best. You're learning your space that you're in. You're learning now. Carmen, I have a question for you. Do you rotate your crops each year through your garden? Because I know you have kind of designated areas. Do you space those out and rotate? So wherever your tomatoes are this year, will your tomatoes be in that same place next year?
I've only ever changed the place of my squash, like the bush squash. And the reason why I do that is because I don't want to take no chances of there being a whole colony in the ground when I pull the squash. Those squash bugs are like, and borers, they're just terrible. And I'm like, you know what? I am just going to confuse them. It may not stop them, but if I can just confuse one of them, I'm happy.
I've taken it upon myself to thoroughly invest full on. I've infested now my entire 750 square feet. I've decided that not only did I want to take my squash and put it here, but next season I'm going to put it here and then I'm going to put it here. So now every space in my garden has had squash on it at least once. And they've all had bugs on them at the same time as well. So I've now basically just said, okay, the only way to get rid of this is burn my whole garden. And Eric's like, we're not burning the garden. I'm like, well, then we're always going to have squash bugs. So I always grow like a spare crop. So I have like my real one and then like my fake out plant. And I just pray that they all take
fake out. I was just going to say that, especially because me, Monica, and Carmen are all in kind of the same zone. And so I don't know what it is about the squash bugs in zone 8A, but it's like they have like a weekly meeting that they go to and they're like, okay, y'all, Carmen planted her plants about 3 feet to the left this year. Y'all may want to move over. I don't know what it is, but the squash bugs are no joke, y'all. And to be a gardener, and we're on our 2nd year of figuring out how to outsmart them, it's impossible because I am still trying to figure out how to outsmart these bugs. And moving the plants around, I have heard, is really good. So that was a great question, Monica, because I have heard if you move your squash around, that it kind of tricks them, but not here in zone 8A, because I have done the same thing. Do you have tricks? Carmen, do you have tricks for our listeners?
I think she has tricks, and I think she may have shared them before.
Well, I did something new. I do plant varieties that are a stronger stem, like Coco Zell and Tromboncino. But this year I got fed up with the squash bugs. Like, it was like no other year I've ever had in my life. Like, I mean, it was terrible. Like, it was so terrible. And it was already getting hot. So I was like, you know what? I'm going to take a risk. It's already getting hot. I always have fall gardening. So if anything happens, it is what it is. I'm going to take a risk. So I got my Muscovy ducks. And I was like, I need y'all to go in the garden and eat every bug that you see. Like, I was looking at them. I was giving a pep talk. I put them in there. I put 3 or 4 in there. And immediately they started waddling around and tearing up the squash bugs. They were going in my squash plant and just destroying them. They were so full of joy and I was enjoying it. I was just watching, left them in there, I think for 2 days. And with Muscovy ducks that I've learned myself, if they have bugs to eat, They won't try to eat your plant. They don't want the plant. That's like a snack. So 2 days was about good for me, where they ate the majority of the bugs that I saw. I mean, they destroyed it. And then I was like, all right, guys, you can go back to your area. So we grabbed them and put them back where they belonged. And I felt so good. Like, I felt so good. I looked and I'm like, look at God. I was like, all these squash bugs are gone. Like, I was just so happy, and I was able to get a lot more squash, from it, and not having to worry about too many of them. I mean, they didn't get every single one, but I mean, they had a heyday in there. And I was just like, you know what? And just like, as far as like like ducks, they like bugs. Chickens like bugs, but ducks love bugs. Like, especially Muscovies. They're natural foragers. They're quiet. So you can watch them at nighttime and just watch them with their little mouths looking for bugs and different things. But my chickens, let's say you don't have ducks and you have chickens. A lot of people, before the season starts, they'll put their chickens in their garden, and the chickens will scratch and scratch and scratch, and they'll eat whatever they can find. And you don't have to worry about them scratching plants up because the season hasn't started yet. So they're pretty much just getting rid of the bugs. So those are little tips. You don't need a ton of chickens in a small space. I mean, you can get like maybe, a lot of people start with maybe 5 or 6 hens. And you could always work from there depending on what you have as far as their coop. 5 chickens in your garden, especially in a small space, that's perfect to start your place. I mean, not only are they eating and scratching, but they're leaving behind little gifts, So it's exciting that your homestead can kind of work for you a little bit.
It's a symbiotic atmosphere. A symbiotic atmosphere when that happens. Everything has its purpose. Everything revolves and evolves around each other. And so they provide the purpose, and it benefits the garden. The benefit of the garden benefits the chickens. It just works round and round and round. It's a great thing.
You know what's funny is I've noticed that my chickens actually prefer foraging and looking for bugs more than they do the expensive feed that I drive 40 minutes into town to buy to bring back to them. They're like, yeah, Dad, thanks. Appreciate it, homie. But we got these bugs right here. And again, as both Alicia and Carmen said, well, one, their poop is gold for your garden pre-garden season. I'm going to just put that out there, pre-garden season, because you want it to, compost it a little bit before you're putting it in. But you're letting them live their best life. They're pooping and they're given the best soil for you to live your best life from all of the veggies that you get to grow in this garden. It's a magical kind of experience if you truly think about it.
So much wonder in poop and bugs. It's amazing.
Well, I was going to say, it's more than just gardening too. So we were talking a little bit about the animals. And when you have a smaller space, you can definitely still raise animals. One of the animals that she touched on was the Muscovy ducks. They are quiet. So if you're in a space where you need quiet animals, Muscovies are actually a great option for you. I will say roosters aren't the only ones that make noise. If you're new to homesteading and you think that just because you don't have a rooster, that chickens are quiet, I'm here to tell you, bubble burst officially. Hens, them girls are loud. When they lay eggs, they're all like, check it out, just laid an egg. And they tell everybody, and they can get loud. It doesn't, just because you have just hens, they can get loud. So FYI, if you're thinking about chickens, just know, yes, they can lay an egg and they sing their song, and it is mighty loud. When you're dealing with HOA, you can get tricky with that. But Muscovy ducks, in particular, Muscovies, are very quiet. They're amazing. They don't quack like the average duck. They're not loud like those, beautiful hens that you have when you're dealing with ducks. The drakes are really quiet, but the hen ducks, they are loud. Now, if you're looking at another quiet animal that's great for small spaces, if you're looking at food sources or just in general for garden, I know Carmen raised these before too. we're looking at rabbits. I think rabbits are an excellent solution for a small homestead. You may not be able to raise a ton of meat birds or a ton of cattle or pigs, maybe even because you have a small space, but maybe you can get a few quiet ducks to lay you eggs, to eat those bugs, and then you can get some rabbits and you can put a couple rabbits in a couple hutches, and you can not only have amazing fertilizer for your compost area for your garden, you have that cold fertilizer, which means you can put it straight in your garden if you want. And we actually take it and put it around the base of our trees whenever we need a little extra boost. When seasons change, Eric takes a bunch of the rabbit poop and basically puts it all around our trees, our fruit trees, all of our extra trees that we're trying to grow nice and big.
It's true gold, the rabbit poop.
Yeah, it is. And they're quiet. They don't lay eggs. So they're not singing you a song. They're quiet, and they can provide you not only with garden gold, but they can provide you with a food source too. And, Alicia's not going out there with her bunnies, but they could provide some joy for your family as well, because not only are they a meat source for some people, but they can provide you with a little bit of that extra love if they're not providing you with just the compost. And maybe you don't want to eat rabbit, but maybe instead they can give you a little extra, just that mental stability that we talk about too, because sometimes it's just nice to go hang out with your animals. I'm just saying. And, it's certain animals are quiet and they're great to have on small scale. And I think Carmen just mentioned, and she might want to say something about, you had quail before, right, Carmen? Or do you have quail now?
We don't have them currently. We'll have them again, but yeah, our quail were actually more quiet than our chickens were. But I don't know if it was because the way we raised them. We pretty much had a quail pen and raised them on the ground, and we gave them plants and herbs and things. They had places to hide. It was they had their own little ecosystem and permaculture area, so they didn't make any noise. It was crazy because I was hearing all these things about sometimes people's quails are really loud. They weren't. I don't know if it was because I was raising them on the ground, but our chickens, like you said, we have a couple like Wyandotte chickens. They are loud. They are loud. So it was surprising to me at how easy the quail were too. You literally feed them. They live. And then you're ready to process them. They were not loud at all. You can totally get away with raising quail in a very small space.
And I think there's something to be said for being able to raise not only your own garden food sources, but if you're not a vegetarian, if you're not a vegan, and you want to have meat, protein for your family, and you live in a small place, you live in small scale, maybe you don't even have a yard. I'm just saying you could people raise birds in their house, FYI. People actually have pet birds, which is totally fine. Have pet birds, but you could raise birds in your house. You can raise rabbits in your house. A lot of people have little bunnies they raise in their house. Put a rabbit hutch, find a space, raise your animals. If you want to be sustainable in that way, find ways to do it. I guess the point too in a lot of this is, don't allow your conditions to determine your successes or your failures. If you constantly say, oh, well, all I have is this or all I have is that. If you look at the perspective, change that perspective and say, I have this amount of space. This space I can do so much with. Let me make a plan and let me go for it, because you really can't let your situation determine your outcome in the end. Because if you let those situations that are small, then you're only going to stay thinking small. So you may have a small space, but you need to think big. Cayce?
Well, I was going to ask because y'all are more knowledgeable on this, but as y'all are talking about rabbits for meat source and talking about quails, I wonder if our listeners are thinking, well, how many rabbits can I get in a year if I have a small amount of area? Because that's the thing. Again, we always, poor Alicia, we throw her out. She's our resident vegetarian. But for the non-vegetarians, when you think about it, you're like, okay, I have a little bit, half of an acre. Okay, we're Carmen right now. So I have a half of an acre, but I want to provide meat for my family. What is the quickest turnover for getting meat? rabbits and quails. How many can I grow? Because, with chickens, they've got to be at least 18 weeks before they start laying the eggs. And then once you got that 18 weeks, then what is it, 23, 24 days before the eggs are actually incubated to where you can actually hatch it. 21, am I getting it? Y'all
21.
jump in.
Also, don't forget, Muscovies are actually like delicacy meat. Okay, if you're gonna consume poultry by way of like duck, you're gonna want to consume Muscovy, a quiet bird, a quiet waterfowl that is not hard to raise, very easy to raise, very quiet, not like your geese or your bigger waterfowl. Muscovies you can eat too, and that is the preferred duck to eat to a lot of people. So, okay, Carmen, go ahead and say, how many rabbits can you get, or what kind of quantity of rabbit or quail or even Muscovy do you want to have? Let's just say you're feeding an average family size of 4.
Okay, so another cool thing about Muscovies is they raise their own young. So when they lay their clutch, they'll get like a clutch from like 10 to 20 eggs, depending on whatever hen you have. She will sit on those eggs for about, I don't know, I want to say like 30 days or something. And she'll raise those ducklings up if she's a good mom. So if she's a good mom, she'll raise them up, and then she'll kind of just show them the water. She'll show them how to eat. She'll show them how to do their thing. And our homestead is very interesting because a lot of people don't know this, but from our chickens and from our ducks, we only eat the males. We never eat the females. So if we get roosters or if we get drakes, they're food. Because you only need one rooster, one drake per like 10 birds. So it's like, why not? So when our drakes are old enough, we wait till they're kind of like, I want to say like 14 weeks, 16 weeks, I don't know, just big enough. When I know they're a male, we'll wait and then we'll process them. And the breast is about one breast is about the size of your hand, probably even a little bigger sometimes with the Muscovies. And it's delicious. It's almost, you can put it in a slow cooker and it's almost like a pulled meat, like a pulled beef. Delicious. We've done tacos, etc. And chickens, or the roosters, our roosters, I'll make broth from them. And any meat that settles towards the middle of the cooking process, I'll take it out. And then we'll have sandwiches, or we'll have a chicken salad, or a soup, or a stew. The roosters and the drakes are very awesome. So rabbits are a very quick turnaround. I mean, all we do is we take our female to the male cage. They do their thing. And then we take her out. She'll sit there for about, I want to say, like, I can't even remember right now, 28 days or so. I think it is
28 to 30. I think it's 28 to 32. It depends on the mom.
Yeah.
I think 28 days you put the next box in, and then they lay. Usually they have their they kindle within the next 3 or 4 days. Usually what Abigail does.
Yep. And then when she has her young, we usually wait 12 to 14 weeks, I think. Yeah. And then they're ready. They're ready to process. Process is very easy. You may not want rabbit if that's like a pet thing to you, but you know what? When you have a mindset, I'm doing this for my family, I'm doing this for our health, I'm doing this because I don't want to rely on whatever meat is coming from the grocery store. And I'm going to be honest with you, a lot of that meat you see at the grocery store, those animals are treated poorly. Very, very, very poorly. It's disgusting, honestly. It's absolutely disgusting. And I'm traumatized from some of the videos that I've seen of how some of those animals were treated. And it honestly opened my eyes to why people are vegetarian, vegan, because it makes you feel terrible. And you don't even know if they're diseased. You don't know what kind of illnesses they have, nothing, because they don't care for them. And it's like, do you want them to care for the ones that you're eating anyway? Because then you have to deal with all these chemicals and all these medicines that they're, and all around, it's terrible. So that was our main goal of caring for these really fast turnaround animals and eating them and getting our nutrition from them from our house, and making sure that if we have any extras, we can give it to our family and friends, because I don't want my family also eating that.
Well, And I think you made it, I was joking earlier saying feeding the multitude, but really though, that's one of the things that I think a lot of us, when we do start to live a more sustainable life where we're trying to grow our own food, whether it's garden or whether it's meat. Now we know everybody knows that gardener who's trying to give away all them extra zucchinis and all them extra things, but those people are blessings to others, right? But like you said,
Wait, are you calling me out, Monica, on this?
You're trying to hand out your zucchinis to people. I know you're going to the farmer's market. Don't even try it. But the thing is that it's important to know that if you live on a small homestead, you can have surplus, and that surplus can benefit someone else. And the thing is that Carmen's homestead is not small. Is it smaller than mine and Alicia's and Cayce's? Sure. But it's not small. Her garden is huge compared to mine. It's still double mine or almost double mine right now. And I'm looking at it going, okay, that's amazing. Whatever space you have, you can still have surplus. And if you have enough for you and then to feed someone extra, that is super important too. I mean, the idea that you can have a little bit extra to give to someone else that might need it, that's the way to do it. And, I think based upon all that, I think it's about time to wrap it up. And I'd like to send it over to Alicia.
Hit the unmute button there. I'm just listening to all of this and I had it on mute. Sorry. It's a wonderful thing that we're discussing here and how we're going to close out this episode, because as everybody was speaking about the size of property they have and what they're doing with it, you've got this wonderful homestead that's on less than a half an acre, and she's giving away her food when she can. She's feeding other families. She's feeding her own family. And I had typed to my co-hosts as they were discussing this, big in heart, small in square foot. So she may not have that large 5, 10, 20 acres, but she is doing wonderful, great things with what she's been blessed with, and she's blessing others with it. So there are ways that you can do that. Again, if you are on a small acreage, if you're in the suburbs and you have a small backyard or side yard, or if you want to take us up on some of those tips on decorating your front yard with some ornamental food so you can, outsmart the man and your neighbors.
Great tips.
Like the idea of planting the peppers, because then, every neighborhood has those little bratty kids that'll come around and steal your stuff. Let them pick a cayenne and pop it in their mouth. I think that would be awesome. So, those used to be my kids. Anyways, so, we had this great episode. Our episodes drop on Mondays. Make sure that you set an alarm so that you know that you can listen to our episodes when they drop on Mondays. And then after they drop on Mondays, go over to our YouTube channel for Round the Hay Bale or to our Facebook group for Beginner Homesteading. And we are going to be having every Tuesday morning, 9 a.m. Central, we have a kind of like pop-up radio show. It's the Hey Y'all Hey morning radio show. And we love to do that for you guys as well. And we kind of go over the topics of what was discussed in the previous podcast. And we have giveaways. And so we'd love to have Carmen join in on that someday too. But, pay attention to those two things that we have weekly. And also, we want to thank our sponsor for our podcast, Cayce. If you've not had the opportunity to use Cayce in your garden, it is a wonderful, wonderful thing. So we're going to close out the show. We'll close out with a commercial for Cayce. And we're going to thank Carmen so much for stopping by and spending this time with us and sharing everything about her wonderful homestead. What a blessing she is to herself and those around her and her family. So appreciative for joining us today, Carmen. Thank you so much.
Thank y'all so much. I appreciate all your sweet words, and I learned a lot too.
Well, it was wonderful having you. So having said that, guys, make sure that you take care of yourself, take care of each other, as we've discussed here tonight, and have a blessed week. And we will see you next time, Round the Hay Bale. Bye, y'all. Bye.